Wow, this is a huge bombshell that just came out when it comes to college basketball with March Madness just around the corner. Nate Oats and Alabama basketball, who are pretty much guaranteed to be a 1 seed. A lot of brackets have them as the number 1 overall seed. Look at this. What a bombshell. A likely first-team All-American on the number 2 team in the country provided his teammate a gun that became a murder weapon, and then his coach comes out and says, wrong place, wrong time. There's an entire story on this, and it is pretty crazy. You've got people wondering what's going to happen to Nate Oats. Crazy situation with Alabama extending Nate Oats after the murder happened. We're going to go through everything. What do we think is going to happen? There's actually kind of something we can compare this to with the New Mexico State situation where there was hazing, there was a murder, and New Mexico State forfeited their entire season. They forfeited the last 7 games, I believe it was, of their season, fired their head coach. Crazy. But when it comes to this Alabama situation, I'm just going to kind of read through the details and then look at some of the reaction and what people are saying. Alabama freshman basketball standout Brandon Miller. Now, guys, Brandon Miller, former 5-star, top 10 player, right now in mock drafts, going 4th or 5th overall, Alabama's best player, brought the gun used in the Tuscaloosa strip killing of a woman that led to capital murder charges to now former teammate Darius Miles and 20-year-old Michael Davis. According to testimony today, Miles contacted Brandon Miller and asked him to bring his gun to where they were. When Miller got to the scene, Miles told Davis the heat is in the hat, meaning that the gun was present. Miles added there's one in the head, meaning that there was a round in the chamber. Miles moved his girlfriend back to get her out of the line of fire. Miller's windshield was struck twice by the gunfire, the police said. Another basketball player on Alabama was also at the scene as well. So this is not a good situation for Alabama basketball. And then this was Nate Oats. They talked to Nate Oats about this apparently on Tuesday at practice, and he said that Brandon Miller is not in any trouble as a result of the alleged involvement. So sounds like Brandon Miller, they're saying like he gave the gun to someone who gave the gun to another person, and that person committed the murder. So it's like he's an accessory to an accessory, and people are saying you can't be charged for that. This was Nate Oats' quote, though. That's pretty crazy. We knew about that. Can't control everything everyone does outside of practice. Nobody knew what was going to happen. I mean, it's sounding like Brandon. This is sounding like some type of, being a passenger for a DUI or something. That's what it sounds like he's making this out to be. College kids are out. Brandon hasn't been in any type of trouble, nor is he in any type of trouble in this case. So, he thinks he's very confident that Brandon Miller is going to be fine when it comes to this. Wrong spot at the wrong time. And that was the big thing that people were very angry about Nate Oats saying. I won't say I have no idea how Alabama can avoid firing Nate Oats for this, because I have a very specific idea of how they might avoid doing that and how college sports work. But come on. To be clear, this extension was announced during the period between the murder and now. Like, what on green earth? So yeah, February 3rd, they extended Nate Oats through the 2029 season. I mean, just looking at like basketball from a basketball standpoint, it's not surprising at all. The turnaround Alabama basketball is, they were a joke, right? They were always a football school. They were never even close to being a top 25 team. They were ranked number 1 for the first time since like 2003 earlier this season. So this is pretty crazy stuff. And then you can see some people reacting. Wouldn't that make him an accessory to murder? Apparently, police are saying he can't be an accessory to murder, meaning even though he gave the gun to a teammate, his teammate giving the gun to an eventual murderer in Miller's car, mind you, is the only chargeable offense. The fact that Alabama didn't immediately suspend him after learning he did this speaks volumes for that school. He's getting off on a technicality. according to someone there. Brandon Miller brought a loaded gun to the scene. Miller was close enough to the scene that 2 gunshots hit his windshield. Then when asked, Nate Oats says that they knew about that, claiming Miller was in the wrong spot at the wrong time. Again, I mean, that quote just makes no sense. He brought the gun for the murder. You know, like, so I don't know what's going to happen with this whole situation, but it's clearly messed up. And for Alabama, this is like worst case scenario, because this is like their dream season right now. And the fact that they actually extended Nate Oats' contract to 2029 after the murder happened, where the player that committed the murder, or I guess is right now in trial for, we don't know, I don't want to say anything, but it's looking, he averaged only like 1.5 points or something like that. So it was kind of like, well, you know, they kind of got lucky. But now with all of this stuff coming out about Brandon Miller and other players possibly being at the scene, this thing is a complete mess. And you have to wonder what happens after this when it comes to Alabama, who is currently a clear far and away a number 1 seed and basically locked into a 1 seed. I mean, you've got Alabama, Houston, and then probably, you know, a team like Kansas and maybe a Pac-12 team. But you know, we'll see what happens when it comes to this. It's going to have a huge effect on March Madness, possibly, depending on what happens. There's a lot of people that are outraged over Nate Oats' handling of it. There's been rumors with Nate Oats and kind of how shady Alabama basketball has been. They've gotten some recruits in the past, especially the past few years. Again, this was a school that really was completely irrelevant when it came to college basketball, and suddenly they come on the main stage and they do this. So this is something we'll have to watch. And the thing I would maybe say you can compare this to is, you know, New Mexico State. I mean, New Mexico State had to cancel their entire season. They had crazy hazing. I'm not accusing Alabama of that, but I'm just saying, you know, what happens now? You know, if you're Alabama, I mean, you know, this is, you don't want to, you know, be insensitive, but it's like this team can win a national title, and then you've got everyone from the outside and being like, what is this? You know, you need to do something about it. And then that quote by Nate Oats, which it just, I mean, from the facts that we know, it just makes no sense. I mean, at wrong place, wrong time is like his buddy got a DUI or something. I mean, that's not what the situation was at all. So we will see what ends up happening with Alabama when it comes to the March Madness. We're all, you know, gearing up for March Madness and stuff like that. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.